I mean, it's funny you mentioned in the early days that French was OP. Then it was Rus was OP. So we're going to see if hybrid Rus is OP, because this is custom mods, folks. Welcome back to Ascended Kingdoms. We have got a Scandinavian mirror here, featuring a Scandinavian up against a Chinese player to decide who continues through in this single elimination format. And we were just talking in the pregame about this whole idea of like strengths and weaknesses. One thing I could see that Lamette, who created this Civ, was trying to do was the idea that the weakness of the Scandinavians is no early access to things like spears. So in theory, cavalry-based Civs should be very impactful against this particular Civ.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way to phrase these four civilizations, first of all, I think against one another, they're fairly like reasonably balanced, because all of these civilizations feel powerful. But in many ways, they carry a lot of extremes. So, for instance, not having that access to early game spearmen in any way, shape, or form for the Scandinavians, or having to research a tech for your monks to pick up relics. But at the same time, it's important to highlight that at the end of the day, this often happens with brand new Civ releases that are official, even.
Yeah.
The problem is that when you develop a game like this, you start with the most elementary functionalities for civilizations, like the French, the English. You look at their bonuses, they are as elementary as humanly possible. But as you expand your game, you bring in brand new functionalities. Talk about mechanics like poison arrows, or the passive gold trickle for Malians, right? And it's very easy to overtune it compared to the old existing civilizations, because some of the new mechanics will inherently be powerful. And it's not even about the fact that the new Civ is powerful, it's just the fact that the old Civs, which carry these old and simple features, are a little weak with those features at the end of the day, right?
It was in general, you're incentivized to make something OP when it's launched anyway. One, if there's a price tag is the obvious thing, but even if there's not a price tag, you want data. You want to be able to gather info to see if it's good, if it's bad, how it functions, right? And the best way to do that is make something a little bit more powerful, because then people are more encouraged to even experiment with it. But no,
that's a fair point. I just had one more thing to add to that, and that's the power creep, though. And this is something that has been observed in AoE 2, which received a lot of DLCs in the last couple of years. And I think a player like Hera, I think it was Hera who brought this up. The problem is that you introduce a new Civ that's very powerful. Next balance patch, you tune some of the older civilizations so that they are not like completely outmatched by this Civ. But the end result is that because you're not heavily nerfing civilizations a lot,
yeah, they eventually
every time you
get
introduce
ridiculous.
new stuff, you kind of raise the baseline level of power. So over time, you have this power creep where every single civilization is just getting more powerful.
Well, that's why you then lead to a spring cleaning patch, right? Like the comparison there, the obvious one for people, because it's very easy to gauge, is World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft eventually reset to a baseline leveling system again because it was getting out of hand. And I think that's important, is every once in a while, if you identify the pacing is getting too fast, see if you can break it down and if it doesn't break the system, right? But you have to be very careful of that, because if people become attuned to the new speed at which things play out, they hate the game being slower. So it's definitely a give or take balancing act, and it can be very difficult to get right a lot of the time. But we have got a lot of things we need to get right explaining with this, though, because we have got a custom Civ, and already I know people looking at this going, what the hell is that? This is the Burka village. It is indeed doing what you think it's doing. It's spawning shoreline fish on land for your villagers to grab. This is basically like the Scandinavians' equivalent of a madrasa.
And now we're seeing that issue, the fact that you don't have spearmen available, because as you kind of highlighted, Kaiser Johann is going to open with horsemen to make life miserable. And these Viking Raiders are terrible against cavalry.
They suck so
they have
bad.
85 base HP, not a lot of damage output. And I just want to highlight, I don't know if that's a misclick from Louis, but on the Burka village, he's getting professional scouts, which feels absolutely horrendous when you have zero map control and nothing that combats cavalry.
Yeah, and it's like, well, what are you going to do now? Go into cavalry in a delay? This is just rough, man. So the idea behind these raiders, I remember when they first sent the concept across to me of the stats, I was like, that is broken. They had to tweak it down a little bit, but it basically gets bonus damage against workers is a really big part. So it's kind of like the English men-at-arms rush, because you can do it in the Dark Age, but more impactful. So in this situation, wasn't able to get it fast enough before a tech up came out. And now he's going to be facing off against horsemen as well as Viking Raiders. And reminder, these Viking Raiders do counter themselves. They're a light melee infantry unit, and they get bonus damage against light infantry.
And Louis wants to go for a second TC. He has gotten the stone he needs, but he also got Pro Scouts. I really feel like Pro Scouts was a misclick here. Maybe he wanted survival techniques or something, but...
Maybe, but like, no, because like, why would you want survival techniques?
Yeah, but why would you want Pro Scouts with Shorefish for the Burka village, a second TC, and absolutely zero map control?
Because, well, it's the old school Roost build. He's basically playing old school Roost, right? You remember, like, the Golden Gate type of things as well, where Pro Scouts was always being done? You're just staying condensed, which I kind of agree with, because he's already behind on Horsemen. You can't really come out to the mid-map. You're going to need static defenses to try and survive the upcoming onslaught.
Yeah, to be fair, this is actually... Scandinavians on an open land map is definitely one of the more balanced civilizations among these new ones. Because you can see how vulnerable they are to cavalry openings.
Yeah.
And let's not understate the significance of the fact that you cannot go for any spearmen, which is an extremely harsh balance decision. Compare that to the English. The English is probably the closest comparison here because they are the only civilization that doesn't have Dark Age spearmen. It only unlocks in feudal. But even that is fundamentally different from the Scandinavians, which do not get it at all for quite some time. I think... I don't know if you have to be Danish or Swedish for the pikemen, but only one of these two get it to Imperial, right?
Danish for the pikemen. It's like the only reason you'd ever go for Danish. I actually flat out said that to Lamette. It's like, there's so many good things for Sweden. This is the only reason why I'd ever consider being Danish. So yeah,
but pikemen are busted though. Like let's
if you're against a cavalry civ, right? But like. This is one of the things as well, is you want to transition off of Raiders eventually, because remember correctly, they stopped scaling in Third Age, right? They don't have any other upgrades past Feudal Age. So they're very much focused on that early presence in the game. You might be wondering, like, why didn't KJ just go for archers? And it's because these Raiders do get +3 ranged armor. They move very fast, and they would get bonus damage against those archers. But mark my words, in other sets, you are going to see the Hornbowmen coming in because they're insane. Having plus ranged armor by default on an archer is ludicrous in a meta that is defined by mass archery.
And it looks like Louis wanted to sneak out with the scouts to pick up those carcasses on the left side. This is regions that we're playing, by the way. Yeah. So you have all this hunt on the left side. But this was scouted immediately by Kaiser Johann, and he's shifting the cavalry to the left. So Louis shouldn't be able to get all those carcasses in there.
I mean, I'm surprised he even got this far out, right? There was an attempt to rotate on the east side to block. Nothing was seen. Instead, though, KJ mistimes it. He's going to miss it. He's chasing back now. He noticed that the count is not right here, so something's definitely been taken away. And he will finally see him. So probably be able to intercept one of these scouts. Actually, Louis just gives up. He doesn't even try to run away with one or two. He just bails.
Yeah, he's going to go back for it. He's just waiting for KJ to actually dive.
I love the fact, by the way, if you select all with these players, the fish highlights.
There's another glitch that's actually more severe, though, and that's something I found when I was testing. You cannot single-click the villager when they're on the shorefish. You can group select them, but you cannot click the villager itself alone.
Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, it's peculiar because like the thought that I find funny about that is that you can assign ownership to fish. What's next? Can we name them? Oh, class coming in anyway. This is a hard hold for Louis. I mean, it's Mass Raider against Mass Raider Horsemen. The Horsemen are absorbing the blows. Meanwhile, anything these Raiders attack is going to die faster, right? Because it's just infantry. Rams coming in as well. And Louis, it might be a fast exit in game number 3 here. No wood to go for the repair. Army is now non-existent. He's still trying to funnel deer back home, but it's coming at an insanely high cost.
I really feel like this game was basically over when the Horsemen arrived for Kaiser Johann. And again, the fact that Scandinavians don't have spearmen available, that just makes life very miserable for them against any kind of a cavalry play. Not the biggest fan of the cavalry being sent in against the villagers because, unironically, those villagers are better against the cavalry than the Viking raiders are.
I think KJ, like, I mean, I don't feel like we necessarily called this early. Yeah. It's just that was an unnecessary dive. Had he stuck on this TC and targeted it down, I think you just have GG and KJ going through, but now Louis stays alive. He wipes the army. He's now able to access the deer, and he still has a villager lead.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's so weird because under normal circumstances, it makes sense to dive villagers because you expect your opponent to have spearmen in the future that deals with your cavalry. But here, it would have been just better to protect these rams because there was absolutely nothing in this world that Louis could do against those those horsemen. And if you keep them along with the Viking raiders, the villagers cannot dive either. Because the Viking raiders would slaughter them.
A little
So
bit
a
perplexing.
combination of raiders and horsemen is not something that the Scandinavians can deal with early game.
Yeah, it's a perplexing situation. I'm trying to figure, did he at least have blood axes? He did, right? That's kind of wild. If he kept the horseman there, I think it's a complete wipe, because if you look at the stats on these, it's ridiculous how big the difference is. It's a +3 advantage, actually +4, because we also have the melee defense from Kaiser Johann. So a little bit surprising that he got overzealous here. If he just focused on wiping the army and using shield wall afterwards, he can camp here forever. He's going to do it again, but this time it looks like it's going to work. Louis barely keeping the TC up. He's building rams underneath the town center because of how insanely fast they get constructed. And it's just forcing reaction after reaction. Louis may have access to the deer, but what he doesn't have is a way of building an army fast enough to push this back. Oh god, the idle time.
He needs to repair this DC non-stop, and things are still bad for Louis. Let's not forget, he's been short on food. He had to continue ferrying carcasses, and he's been losing villagers as well to these raids.
Wait, Louis?
Anytime these villagers jump out, even with tech stalls, they're being beaten up by Viking raiders.
It's 19
and those
damage.
guys,
19
yeah,
damage
it's
per
a
strike.
lot.
And he has textiles, by the way. Like, if anyone's like, oh, just your standard damage. No, that's 75 HP. Look how quickly you die to one of these guys. They attack every 1.23 seconds. Insane. And now as a result of that, Eco is neck and neck, but Louis is consistently idling out about 15 villages. Worse still, he's spending resources to keep this town center alive.
Yeah, it's just not working for Louis. He's going for the same composition, but at the same time, the eco lead that's supposed to be there as a consequence of the second TC, it isn't. He's down by 4 villagers. A lot of his villas are idle as well. He's making the same unit composition but with a substantially smaller eco.
I think we are going to be saying farewell to Louis. I mean, it's triple racks, and I think on the other side, what? It's mirrored? Yeah, but the problem is just, this is what makes the Raiders seem so good, is the movement speed to arrive here. Look how quickly they get into the fight. 1.3 to run across the field. And the villager health bars, oh my dear god. Just like that. A second ago, we were at 45-45. It's down to 35.
Yeah. I really feel like Scandinavians in early game on an open land map like this. It's a civilization that hard counters many civs, including existing ones. But there are also certain civs that would just absolutely nuke this civ as it is.
Oh, mark my words, my friend. The late game is no pushover either, but this has been all about the early. We've seen it on water. We've seen it on land. And right now, it's fair to say Scandinavia is looking OP. Their flex is strong and reminding people how they raided all the way through Europe. And the Rus were no exception.
Yeah, and honestly, just going Viking Raiders doesn't really work here for Louis. Horseman probably would have been better trying to hold this, but it's just not going to happen. He's trying to mirror. And again, Kaiser Johann is the one mixing in the horsemen. Do not underestimate the significance of those in these fights.
It's insane, right? Because they have no melee armor, but what they do have is more effective HP because they're not taking an extra 7 damage here. Ludicrous. And then it just gives you that kind of rotational potential to run through just as quickly with the Raiders. So you're not really losing out on anything. But Louis, about to lose out in the game. He's down to 28 villages. He refuses to wave the white flag. I respect it. But can we just talk about how ludicrously fast these rams get built? That is insane. That is the second time KJ has built the siege underneath the TC, unpunished. And it's one time too many here. KJ forces the GG, takes the series 2-1 for a showdown with Wham.